Good day, good day. This is James Brewster with jamesbrewster.com, and this is going to be part three of how to read the news. And we're going to be covering two opinion pieces and editorials. Last time we covered news stories from New York Times and Wall Street Journal. Today we're going to cover editorials and opinion pieces, and you'll quickly see what the difference is and what you need to be aware of. Doesn't mean that you can't read them. It just means that, hey, you've got to know what you're getting. And again, as have been going through this, we've been referencing, and I'll have the link down below, an article from Business Insider, which has where do these news stories fall along the political or ideological spectrum. And I touched off last week with this quote from Twain. If you don't read the newspaper, you're uninformed. If you read the newspaper, you're misinformed. So that's that was from a while ago, but that is still very relevant today. So we're going to get right into it. So first, New York Times, same order. Opinion: all the president's crooks. So just by and let me back up a step here. So again, what we did last time was we read the title, read the first one or two paragraphs, read the last one or two paragraphs, and of course looking at the last paragraph, which might contain the conclusion, not always, but might, and then you can make a judgment call as to whether or not you want to read that article in full. So again, all the president's crooks. So immediately you see where New York Times is along the political spectrum. Um, the phrase "no love lost" here really applies. All the president's crooks. Now, this may be true, but this still comes out as you know exactly where the editorial board is coming from on this. Um, One of them, President Trump's own lawyer, has implicated him in a crime. So, yeah, still could be a big deal. So let's start from the start of the Russia investigation. President Trump has been working to discredit the work and integrity of the special counsel, Robert Mueller, praising men who are blatant grifters, cons, and crooks, insisting that he's personally done nothing wrong, and reminding us that he hires only the best people. And on Tuesday afternoon, the American public was treated to an astonishing split screen moment involving two of these people, as Mr. Trump's former campaign chief was convicted by a federal jury in Virginia of multiple crimes, carrying years in prison at the same time that his longtime personal lawyer pleaded guilty in federal court in New York to his own lengthy trial of criminality and confessed that he had committed at least some of the crimes at the direction of Mr. Trump himself. So now we have a disconnect here. So we now a lot of this, even though you have blatant grifters, cons, and crooks, you have he's discrediting the integrity of the special counsel. Like you see exactly where the editorial board is coming from. Robert Mueller has integrity. He's a good guy. He's doing the right things. President Trump is trying to discredit him. He's hired a bunch of grifters, cons, and crooks, and he hires the best people. That's a little bit tongue-in-cheek because if you're convicted on several counts of tax evasion and tax fraud and campaign finance, you've broken campaign finance law, you're obviously not only the best people. So you see where this is coming off. Now, where I say there's the disconnect is so far all of this means that President Trump has hired potential crooks, criminals, whatever. What does this have to do with the Russia investigation? I don't see, so far they've only broken our laws. I don't see anything about, well, they were talking with President Putin and because of that they did this, or they were working with a Russian double agent and because of that they did all of this. So far, all of this is per their own stupidity. It has nothing to do with the Russia investigation. So this might be a caution for me, not because of the facts that are embedded in him in here, but because my concern would be, are we going to try to tie this back to the Russia investigation? Because this is the longest running investigation that has uncovered everything except for conspiracy with Russia. So I don't know. It's like it's almost, seems to be a common theme, but none of this that's been listed has anything to do with Russia. So let's scroll down. So there is a little bit here. Now, all right, despite this mercenary history, or perhaps more disturbingly, because of it, Donald Trump, while running on promises to clean up Washington, hired Mr. Manafort to run his presidential campaign, a job he may well have kept but for news reports that he was receiving and hiding millions of dollars from his work on behalf of, I'm not going to try to pronounce that. What does it tell you about Mr. Trump that he chose to lead his campaign uh, someone like Mr. Manafort, whom even on Tuesday he called a good man? It tells you that Mr. Trump is consistent and consistently contemptuous of honesty and ethics because he has surrounded himself with people of weak, if not criminal, character throughout his career. So that's actually a pretty good conclusion, because, again, they went through all the preserved facts, and yeah, so, and then said, hey, this is the conclusion. And as someone who leans a little bit more conservative, I have to agree, for it is not a great thing for President Trump to be running on the premise that, hey, I'm going to clean up the swamp, I'm going to clean up Washington, and to bring in people who would do this much stuff and be able to be convicted of this much stuff. It's just not a good thing. Now, getting back to the first point that I made, one of the first points that I made, um, pro-Kremlin Viktor Yanukovych as president of Ukraine. Now, there's still a little bit here to pro-Kremlin, almost like, hey, so the president of Ukraine is pro-Kremlin, and because of that, maybe there's possibly a connection to Russia in this, is how I'm reading this. Now, of course, history, I've been reading a little bit of history, and Ukraine, there's no love lost between Ukraine and Russia. In fact, Russia has been recently invaded Ukraine and took a bunch of land on one of the peninsulas down near the Black Sea. So I'm not sure how pro-Kremlin would tie into Ukraine if Russia is pretty much, I mean, if Ukraine is doing the bidding of Russia, it's because Russia's being a bully, not because they're working together. And last time I checked, we were giving more powerful weapons to Ukraine so that they could actually defend themselves from Russian armor and not have more land taken away. So there's still the bubble or the air of, oh, this might possibly be connected with Russia, even though all the facts seem to be pointing towards um, Manafort's and who's the other guy? Manafort's own corruption and Cohen's own corruption. So there are a couple conclusions here that I wouldn't agree with. I might still read this in entirety because even though, again, you definitely see where New York Times is coming from, there are enough facts interspersed in this article that I still might read it just to see what the editorial board is getting at. So yeah, I might read it, might not, but again, they're trying to make a couple connections to Russia that I don't think exist. Now, is there possible corruption? Oh yeah, there's possible corruption, or at the very least stupidity. So without further ado, let's go to the Wall Street Journal. So this is an opinion piece. Manafort, Cohen, and Trump. A guilty plea and verdict raised the political stakes for the president. So, all right. So the jury convicted conviction of Paul Manafort and the guilty plea by Michael Cohen on Tuesday are a damaging commentary on the shadowy operators Donald Trump associated with in his private and political life. Whether they also pose a fatal threat to his presidency is far from clear, however, and the evidence in both cases is unrelated to Russian collusion claims that set these prosecutions into motion. Virginia jury convicted Mr. Manafort of 8 counts of fraud in his professional financial dealings while failing to reach a unanimous verdict of 10 others. As these columns warned Mr. Trump in 2016, Mr. Manafort was a longtime Beltway fixer whose business was profiting from his political corrections. He is the personification of the swamp. So, actually, this is kind of funny. So, right off the bat, so this editorial page or piece is talking about what I just discussed with the New York Times article, actually. Number one, well, again, Wall Street Journal also does not like President Donald Trump. There are many columnists and part of the editorial board which they didn't like Hillary Clinton, but they didn't really like Donald Trump either. So they kind of they were kind of in the middle in that they didn't really like either one. So that was kind of funny. Yeah, New York Times loved Hillary, didn't like Donald at all, but Wall Street Journal didn't like Hillary or Donald. So that was kind of funny. Now, what I just said in with the New York Times piece, whether they also pose a fatal threat to his presidency is far from clear. However, the evidence in both cases is unrelated to Russian collusion claims that set these prosecutions into motion. So yeah, we're getting a lot of stuff out of these trials, none of which are directly connecting Russia with President Trump. So again, yeah, we have the special counsel that's finding everything else except for the thing the special counsel was put in place to look for. And also what I said that, yeah, if President Trump, if this is all good, and he said he was going to clean out the swamp, and they're saying here he is, Mr. Manafort, 8 counts of fraud in personal financial dealings. He is the personification of the swamp. Again, that is not necessarily fact. It is a technically opinion, but again, along the same lines of what I just said, where he said he's going to clean everything up and brings in all the people who are then convicted on multiple counts. So, yeah. So, scanning through this, there is a fair amount here. We doubt Mr. Mueller, Mr. Cohen's plea doesn't stipulate that he must also cooperate with Mr. Mueller, though he would certainly do if he wants to impress the judge at his sentencing. But as with Mr. Manafort, it isn't clear what he knows about Mr. Trump and Russia or Mr. Trump's presidential business matters. We doubt Mr. Mueller will indict Trump as a sitting president, but the ultimate threat to Mr. Trump is political. Congress decides what is an impeachable offense, and if Democrats retake the House in November, they will define high crimes and misdemeanors. The Cohen and Manafort convictions raise the stakes for Trump and his presidency, but voters may want to see more than evidence about payments to a porn star to overturn the results of a presidential election. So, yeah, there's, again, and another article that I'll get into in part 5 will talk about the political dangers. I mean, if a president is being dogged by these types of allegations his or her entire term, that's going to make him less effective, whether you like him or not. And again, what connection does this have to Russia? So far, not seeing it. Also, yeah, I mean, payments to porn stars, I mean, not a great thing. Is it enough to be an impeachable offense? I mean, we know what's happened in the Oval Office, aka Bill Clinton, and so this wouldn't be the first time that a president has done something gross, let's just say. So is that enough to impeach? I guess they did try to impeach Clinton, but I don't think it was necessarily because of his relationship, is because he lied about it. Now, I'll have to look into that. That was a long time ago. But yeah, a lot of stuff. Again, a bunch of we just don't know what's going to happen. But overall, I would probably read this. It seems like it's definitely an opinion. Again, not really much love lost here from the Wall Street Journal either, but I would probably read this piece, keeping in mind that just as with the New York Times, Wall Street Journal's not really in Donald Trump's back pocket either. So there's going to be a little bit of the negativity. He is the personification of the swamp. But overall, both of these pieces, I think I would prefer Wall Street Journal in this instance to New York Times. But even the New York Times article, I'd probably read just to see what they're saying. It's good to get perspective from different sides of the political spectrum because they'll both have different opinions. But if you take what facts are buried in the articles and piece them together, and if you did that with both the news stories and then also the editorials and opinion pieces from both New York Times and Wall Street Journal, I imagine that you'll get a pretty good roundabout picture of what's happening and why it may not be bad for President Trump's future. So, hope this was helpful. Uh, again, hope that you all took something away from this. Again, we'll have two more parts here. Be sure to subscribe, hit the little bell for YouTube so that you're notified when I upload these other videos. I'll upload the next one here in about a week. And yeah, be sure to check out Patreon to see other content and exclusive content. So hope you have a good rest of your day. Bye.